Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel here on YouTube, where I've got the top 5 takes for you on Million Dollar Island, episode 6. That's right, I'm your host Chris, and I'm back here with my top 5 takes for this latest episode. But before we get into it, please consider subscribing, please consider hitting the like button, putting the notification bell on so you can be informed the next time we go live or drop one of these videos. And also, please let me know your thoughts on the episodes as well as you listen to these top 5 takes that I have on it. And I'd be curious to know, what do you think of the show? Are you happy with it? Are you still invested long term? I've had some mixed responses, with some people really loving it, other people struggling to fully get behind the concept of the show. And I have to say, at this stage, I'm kind of in the middle myself. I know that Kahuna and Maki are both big supporters of the show. They do the longer format live streams of it each week as well. But let me know down below what your thoughts are, so I can also read into that. I'd love to get a general feel of what people think of the show out there. I did notice that when it comes to the audience numbers, that the show has started to hover around 250 and 260,000 views, which I think is reasonably solid if you consider the fact that we've had Traitors, I think, around that same sort of vicinity last season, and it did get a second season. So hopefully that does mean that we see a second Million Dollar Island season. I'm invested in the concept. I think there's a few things we can do maybe to improve it and make it a little bit more entertaining to watch it myself. It might be something that's relevant to myself that other people don't agree with, but it could be a nice off-season topic to discuss when this show has concluded. And we still have to see how this whole season plays out, because obviously each week there could be something new. Like this episode, for instance, they threw out the whole, if you've had one bracelet up to this point, if you're someone that have been sitting back, you're going to be in danger in the next round. So, maybe we're still all figuring out the strategy to this game, if there is a strategy even on how to game it and how to get to the end. But let's get into the top 5 takes here for this episode. Takeaway number 1. Coming into this episode, it was Jake's reign. He got the power with the spin of the wheel, and that's one of the things here, if you would allow me to indulge a little bit here, that I don't fully like yet, is the fact that this big wheel gets spun and it's all about luck, getting a number to get power. I almost want them to earn that power somehow in the future. Like if they were to compete, or each tribe had a champion to go up against each other, and one of them will get power, at least take a little bit of the randomness away from it. I know that now that some people have had multiple bracelets, they become more likely to get the wheel land on them. But somehow, for them to have power, it seems now that people think they've done something in the game when they've really done nothing. It's just the wheel has landed on them and they've got to make a decision. So to me, I kind of feel like, someone like a Yasmin who's just got one bracelet can be in danger next week, but she's already been in power once, and she's had to make a decision. So is it even fair for her? Like, did she really sit in the shadow? Did she not sit in the shadow? I'm still trying to get my head around the fact that the power is earned in such a random way in this show. But, nonetheless, it was Jake's week of power. He, I think, did a lot of good things here. Now, normally I'm totally against throwing yourself into any kind of arena situation where you potentially could go home. But it's starting to get closer and closer to the mid-season. They had like 45 or 46 players left in the game going into this round. He had a better odds than anybody else because there was only going to be 4 people nominated. So he was going to go up against 3 people, 1-4 shot of coming back with all of the money. And he did decide to go after people who had multiple bracelets in the game to give him the maximum opportunity to become the richest person out there as well. So I think, throwing down the likes of Annalise and Georgie, who both had 3 bracelets, 100% fine. And some people may have a really big issue with the fact that he went after his friend in Corey and threw him down there and took him on, wanted to get his bracelets from him. And Corey kind of seemed like he was not very happy with it, because he is like this hero figure out there, the Captain America or the Thor of this. If Brett is Thanos, out there. And at the end of the day, Corey does end up doing really well against him here. But I didn't have a problem with Jake taking the shot. This is a game. And like he said, in real life, maybe he wouldn't have taken the shot. But he didn't know Corey before he went out there. And this is, 12 days in, maybe 15 days into the game. And for me, it was always fair. All's fair in love and war. They're not even in the same camp. he could always take a shot at him and try and take the bracelets off him. So I'd like to know what you guys think. Was it a step too far? Did he walk over the line for you between being a good human being or not by making this move? But for me personally, great game move. Even though it did blow up in his face and he didn't end up getting the bracelets, I applaud him for at least having a shot here in this specific position in the game. Because, like I said, you don't know when your one number is going to get called on again to make a decision and to have power in the game, because it's so hard to obtain power in this game. All right, let's get into takeaway number 2, the challenge itself. Once again, I enjoy the challenges. The challenges a lot of the times do remind me of other reality TV competitive game shows. And I think that, again, when reality competitive TV has been out there for 20 plus years, there's only that many things that you could really do. You know, I think most things have probably already been done by these shows. And this one here, they did have its own twist in it. They had to swim out to a structure. They had to dive underneath it and then unlock puzzle pieces. They had to get 2 puzzle pieces, and whoever got there first got the key first and could decide who they would allow to unlock their puzzle pieces next, which I really like, because it meant that some people had to wait and there was a little bit of strategy. Obviously, because Jake was the one that threw them down there, they all wanted to get back at him as best they could, and he had the last opportunity every single time to get his puzzle pieces. Ultimately, they had to swim back with those puzzle pieces and solve a word puzzle. Corey does come out trumps. He does end up winning it, and then very briefly again becomes the richest man on the island. But we do know that there's quite a lot of bracelets up for grabs by the end of this challenge, which means that if either Georgie or Annalise won the survival challenge, Corey would again not be the richest man on the island. And Jake doesn't end up even making it to the survival challenge and gets pulled by medical because he faints on the way back to camp, which was a sad way for him to go out. But it brings up something that for me is very interesting. You know, as we talk about takeaway 3 here, takeaway 3 is that we're definitely getting the whole Corey versus Brett showdown sold to us at the moment by the producers, and I'm living for it. You do need a good guy and you do need a bad guy that you shout against, or a good guy that you shout for in the game. Most of the times, I'm actually the person who loves the villain. I like the bad guy. I like the people who plays the game within the game. And the good guys, for me personally, can sometimes be very boring game players. So, but it was interesting because it almost feels like Corey and Brett, even the way they reacted to their tribe mates in this specific episode, really reflected who they are in this game, because Brett could not care less about Jake. He was happy for Jake to lose. He didn't care about the fact that Jake didn't come back to camp. He actually mocked him, and he said, you know, he's probably scared of coming back and owning up to the fact that he just lost and he made such a dumb move in his mind. And I feel like all of this was very much Brett being selfish, because he knew that that Jake put him at risk of potentially losing out being the richest man on the island, which would have taken away his safety. And because of that, everything that Jake did was dumb, you know, and he was like going to get back at him. And he couldn't care less about him. But then when you look at Corey on the other side here, how supportive he is with his tribe mate, Georgie, when she goes into the survival challenge, he doesn't even care about the fact that he's going to lose out of becoming the richest person. He's just there for Georgie, and he wants Georgie to come back so that their tribe can be stronger. So it was very interesting to see the differences between the two players and how they move and maneuver through this game. In the end, it's going to be interesting to see if there's going to be enough space for both of them to be in the final 3. I don't think it's going to happen. I think one of them will fall before we get to the end of the game. And I can't wait to see how that plays out. That's the most intriguing storyline for me right now in this whole game, is the Brett versus Corey storyline. Who is going to reign supreme at the end? And that's what I'm here for. That's what's keeping me invested until the end of this season. All right, let's talk and takeaway number 4 here, a little bit about the survival challenge. As I mentioned, the survival challenge, only 2 players do end up going into the survival challenge. It's going to be Annalise, who's a previous model. She came in strong and came in hot this episode. It's very hard to get behind these players when you haven't known them the whole time. And I think that has been a criticism that people have been giving the shows, that, oh, now we should care about this person that's in danger, instead of building a coherent and long storyline behind them and showing more of what they do in camp before we get here. But also, it's hard to criticize editors of the show because there's so many people. They just wouldn't be able to fit everybody in each episode. But Annalise, she goes up against Georgie in this specific spot here, and it becomes a little bit of a grudge match, which we'll talk about in the next takeaway. But there's this whole thing about the food. So they're kind of like the champions for their two tribes going against each other here. But the survival challenge itself is that they have to run and collect water, come back, fill a pot, let the water boil, and then the first player to get the water boiled by getting the fire started and everything, they win the survival challenge. So a little bit repetitive because, again, it's making fire, but there is the water element that is being used with it here in the specific episode as well. And Georgie, she does end up winning it. She gets a hollow coconut with a little hole in it, which seems to be the most effective way to transport the water back and forth, because I was impressed by both of them and how quickly they got that fire started. So if any of them are listening to this, I'd love to know, did you use flint like the others did in the first episode? Because they couldn't almost get that fire started within an hour. And it seemed, or it felt like this was very quick. Like collecting the water took an hour, but it looked like they really got their fire started very quickly. So hats off to both these ladies. They did a phenomenal job, and it was very close in the end, but Georgie does end up taking this out, and Corey is very happy to hand back his bracelets to his tribe mate because he's looking at the numbers. And he's saying, well, we now have a 49% chance of winning the next round of the roulette. And obviously, we know how that ends up with him winning it. So doing the math there, very happy for the bracelets to stay in his camp, especially because this grudge match is starting to form between these two camps. All right, let's talk about it. The last takeaway here is going to be an interesting one. It is takeaway number 5. It's a rivalry that we see formed here because of a lack of food. It's Vine versus Log Camp. Vine Camp doesn't want to share the food. Log Camp, they want to get food from Vine Camp or anybody that will help because they're starting to run out of food supply. And it's an interesting one because we have a lot of different people here telling us how wrong it is that food are being withheld from them, and it's unfair in the game. I believe the girl's name was Kylie, the one who spoke about it, and how she could never get it over her heart, like humanity needs to come into this and all that. But she talks like they're actually going to starve these people out there, like they're going to allow for them to die. You can leave the game. This is not real life. Like, I'm sure none of these people in this camp would have let somebody in real life, if they saw them on the streets starving to death, would just leave them there if it's within their ability to help them. But this is a game. And this is where I do like what Jack brings into it from Vine Camp, where he says, we're not sharing the food. In fact, we're doing more to supplement our current rations by going out and fishing, and we're not seeing you do anything like that. We don't see you go out there and catch fish or doing extra things to try and supplement your food supply. So this is a game, and one of the ways that you can win this game is by getting the other camp to quit because they don't have enough food. So for me, I'm fully on Vine Camp's side here, even though I know Corey and the Log Camp feel like they're the worst human beings out there for not sharing. And where's Top Camp in all of this? Because Top Camp's sitting back saying, you guys fight each other, you guys take each other out, we'll sit back. But I don't see Top Camp sharing that food either. And if I was out there, I would have also said, keep an eye on your own camp. Now, the fact that they had the most people out there, they had a decision in the beginning of who they wanted to work with and who they didn't want to work with. They clearly didn't take this into consideration. And I can't say from the get-go, I'm not going to be that, I'm not going to be that guy that will say, yes, I would have known that this is going to be where we would end up if we had too many people in the camp from the start. And I don't think they thought about it. But now, as someone that's watching the show, I think that if there is a season 2, these are going to be things that people are going to take into consideration. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is more than 3 or 4 camps in the future, because people are going to say, let's get into smaller groups together so we don't end up getting starved out. But then again, there's also power in numbers with the bracelets and the likelihood of your camp being saved, especially the way the game's being played out now with it being camp versus camp. My thoughts on this, personally, is that there's nothing wrong with them not sharing the food. This is a game. They have to look after themselves in it. But I would be interested to know what you guys think. Where do you sit on this whole thing? Or is the food drama just too much? Because I've also seen some people online complain that the biggest drama we get in this is about food. And I think that it just comes down to the fact that people don't vote each other out and they don't get to betray each other very often. Or when they do betray someone, like Jake betraying Corey here, he's out of the game. So there's going to be like no repercussions to it in any case. There's not going to be drama that moves forward. But I do want to say, and I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but Jack speaking out, letting them know that he never saw them going out there and doing anything, not the smartest thing to do when you've got one bracelet. and that when you know that the next round you could potentially go in, why make so many enemies? He just needed to use a little bit more. Even though I agree with him, I just think socially the way he expressed himself wasn't the smartest thing to do, and I think he's going to pay for it in this next round. And 100%, this Vine camp is in trouble because Corey is going to shoot them into that survival challenge, arena challenge as quickly as he can. And he's going to try and save as many of his team as he can. He might just, like they say in the next on part of Million Dollar Island, he might just completely eliminate them in the game now. Anyways, that's my top 5 takes here for episode 6. Please keep an eye on the channel because later on this week we will have a live where both Maki and Kahuna will go very deep. I'm talking 2 hours long talking about this. Episodes that is going to drop for this specific week. So if you do like a more in-depth analysis, and if you just want to come and hang out with the guys and take part in the conversation, keep an eye on the channel because we should be posting that up in the next day or so when they will be live this week. But I believe it's the same time every week. For now, catch you guys next time. Thank you for watching. Bye.